it's bondage, it's chains. It's to be a prisoner, it's to be in a place that you don't want to be. All those things are ways that we are captive. So the part of the series focus, the main idea is for us to not become a captive to life. A lot of times we allow life to happen to us, and we just roll with what life gives us. I know you gotta keep moving, you can't just avoid it and run away. But sometimes instead of planning, instead of dreaming, instead of hoping, we just say, I'm just gonna wait till the next bad thing happens and figure it out. And we live from bad thing to bad thing to bad thing. And it really drains us of hope, and it drains us of joy when all we're seeing is bad thing, bad thing, bad thing. Because circumstances, life has a way of beating us down. One of my favorite quotes is actually from a Rocky movie. And he's talking to his son. This is, one of the last Rocky. I think it's Rocky 5. And he's talking to his son, and he says that, nobody will hit as hard as life. And it's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward and keep moving on. Life has a way of beating us down, and it will keep us down if we let it. It really will. Because it's easy for us to say, this happened, and, it's ruined my life. This one circumstance. It'd be easy for a lot of us to point at one time in our life when something terrible happened to us, of not even of our own control, and say, this is what changed me, and you can allow that to define me even. For me, it would be really easy for me to say that, look at and say, I lost my mom when I was 20, and allow that to define me. Because it does change your life. It changes your feelings, your reactions. When I was at the hospital with Karen and Ron, we were talking about it. My mom's accident would have been 11 years ago, March 26th. And she's been gone, she'll be gone for about 8 years now. So it's just kind of hard to think of, everything that's happened in 8 years. First of all, she didn't see any of her kids get married. She didn't see any of her grandkids born. Just those things, let alone everything else that could have happened in 8 years. So we can allow those things to define us, or we can allow them to help shape us, to help mold us, but to make us better, instead of allowing this is my identity, it's just a part of my life. We have to be able to move forward. Last week, when we were going on through this series focus is not being a captive of life, it's that we need to take our mind captives before it takes us. We need to be able to take it, we need to be able to hold it. Because our minds are our worst enemy sometimes. Our mind is the mind, it's the one that keeps us up at night. It's the one that stresses us. It's the one that we can't think, we can't focus. Our mind does that. Our mind seems to be our worst enemy at times, because I know I am my own worst enemy. I will critique everything I do far more than anyone else ever will. And we were talking about perfectionism yesterday. I know I am my own worst critic. I listen to myself preach every week, and I can write down notes of what I did wrong. I did this, I did this, I did this. And I bet when you guys watch film tape, you can sit there and write a list of things you did wrong. When you watch yourself do anything, singing, performing, you'll sit there and be like, I looked down too much, I didn't smile enough, I said this wrong, I said too many times. And we allow that to define us. So we have to be able to take our minds captive. We need to hold our minds in a place and say, this is what I will think, this is what I will focus. So that last week when we were going through taking our minds captive, we have to protect our minds. We have to put good things in. We have to keep the bad things out. So we have to be able to keep them out. We have to shape them. And if we allow only bad things in, it's garbage in, garbage out mentality. So we have to protect our minds. We have to renew our minds. We have to allow them to be renewed. We have to allow them to get new things, the good things. They talk about, if you've ever tried to grow a plant, if you give it, Dr. Pepper instead of water, it's probably not going to last very long, right? It needs water to survive. Giving it Dr. Pepper is probably like giving it poison. But if you give it water, it'll thrive, so it allows it to renew. And then the last part of that is that we have to allow God to transform our minds. We cannot change the mind of ourselves, we can't change the minds of other people. So why do we think that we can transform our entire thought process on our own? It doesn't happen overnight, it's not an easy process, but with God, it can happen. So that's kind of where we were last week. That's where we were. And this week we're continuing into transforming our heart. We're going to look at how we can change our heart, how we can take our hearts captive. A great example of this that I was thinking of, and I was trying how can I say that our mind and our heart sometimes work against each other? They fight each other. They're always wrestling back and forth. And the best example I could think of from my own personal life is me and Kristen. We will have been dating and married combined 10 years this year in June. We started talking right around this time because I know it was in between Empower and Max, just March and April events in the Nazarene youth. Kristen, actually I liked Kristen about a year before this, but she wanted nothing to do with me. She allowed the mind to make some decisions, say, he hangs out with guys that aren't really good examples, and I don't know if I think he's a good example because of that. So I was, as she says, I'm guilty by association. This is a fun story, so she knows I'm telling it. I know I get told I throw her under the bus sometimes, but, it comes with being married to a pastor, I guess. But don't worry, I throw myself under the bus way more. But she didn't want anything to do with me. Her friend was like, you should probably talk to him. He's a really good guy. But she didn't believe it. So she actually dated one of my friends. The only person that she's ever dated. She dated him for a month or two. But me and her went to church together where my friend didn't. Well, when my friend would come to church with us, he's like, well, I want to sit by Kevin. Well, then there were times when he wouldn't show up. So she's stuck sitting there next to me during church service in a church that's very crowded. And she comes to realize that, hey, maybe he's not that bad. And most of you know how quiet my wife is and how quiet I am not. So you can imagine she's standing next to me and it's like, this is awkward. So I'm trying to talk to her and she's like, nods, yeah. And then when she finally say a few things, it's like you felt like you really won. It's a victory. And she's still that way. She still doesn't talk that much. She's not rude. She doesn't dislike you. She's just happy to listen. She doesn't have to talk that much. Until she gets to know you, then she'll talk more. But with that, we've been married almost 5 years. We've started dating in 2008 after I graduated high school. And our mind will allow things to get in the way of things that God may have for us. I'm not saying I was her gift to God. It's more the other way around from God. She was my gift from God because she's helped keep me in line and helped keep me from doing as many stupid things. It's a full-time job. So it's a lot of work. And that's why she's always listening. She's waiting for me to do something stupid. So she's like, hey, you shouldn't have done this. Here's what you should have done. Or whatever. So, I am my own worst enemy. I understand that. But we have to be able to fight our way and see the difference and peel it back, the difference between our mind and our heart and what's getting in the way of each other. Because taking our minds captive will allow us to look at things and see them differently, but our heart is deceived very easily. Our heart's kind of, I know we always talk about leading with our heart, just do what your heart wants. Well, my heart wants really bad things. Big, greasy cheeseburgers, greasy pizza, you can see it drip off. My heart wants bad things. My heart wants to drive really fast. It wants to cut people off. It wants to flip people off in traffic. It wants to honk at people. My heart wants to do a lot of really stupid things. So following our heart is not the best intention. It's not the best advice. I personally, and you can believe differently, it's okay. I personally don't believe in the magical thing of soulmates where there's one perfect person for everybody and that's just how it works. I think a lot of it is really finding the kind of person that will put up with your kind of crazy. Because, usually everyone's a little bit crazy. You gotta find someone that's a similar kind of crazy and it works. But the thought that our hearts can just cling to one person only and there's no one else out of 7 billion people, just my mind does not comprehend that. Because it's been shown scientifically there's really only about 4 personality types. So if there's only 4 personality types, there's a chance that there's someone else that has almost the exact same personality as you. So your heart can be deceived. So there's a lot of these things that we can look at, we can see where our heart is wrong. I don't know about you guys, but just driving with spring break traffic around Branson has been Come on. I'm like keeping myself in check. Breathe, it's okay. It's okay. I was coming off the exit ramp Friday night onto Main Street, 76, where it loops around like this. Coming off of it, and someone stops slams on the brakes right in front of me and blocks it because they want to get in the left lane instead of the right lane, even though they both go the same direction. And it's just like, what are you doing? And these are the things where my heart, wants to slam on the horn and put the car in park and jump out and pull them out of the car. Like that's our heart is like to do really stupid things. But my mind's like, hey now, what if this is someone that's coming to visit your church? Or what's someone going to think if they see that this was their pastor honking at them? Or anything like that. There's a reason I joke around about. I have a friend that they're pastor in Springfield, and they have a sticker on their car that says their church on it. It doesn't say the name, but it's their logo behind it. And there's a reason why I haven't made those yet. Because it's like, I don't know if my driving deserves the church sticker on it. I want to get them made, but I'm afraid to put it on the cars. Because I'm like, I'm going to be responsible for my driving to anyone in the community, and I'm not sure if my heart or my mind is ready for that. So our heart gets in the way. And those are all fun illustrations. They're funny, but they're also true. And I know I'm not alone, especially on the driving side of things, because sometimes Branson is bad. Springfield itself is like the worst town I've ever driven in. And I've driven in like LA, in Atlanta, in Charlotte, in Knoxville, Nashville, Dallas, Houston. I've driven to most of the big cities outside of New York, and it's the worst that I've ever driven in. Still, and it's a square. It's like, how can we drive this bad in a perfect square? You go this way, you go north, you'll hit 44, you go south, you'll hit 60. If you go east, you'll hit 65, west, you'll hit 360. So it goes around, it's the loop. It's not a hard town to drive in, but we can't get it figured out. I don't know if you've ever driven on like Kansas City or St. Louis or any of them, you're like, which one is this? Like, it all seems like it just twists back and forth. So, we're learning here in Branson still. But today's focus is that a clean heart, a safe heart, a happy heart, it's a captive heart. But basically, the clean, I just wanted to define clean for us. It's something that we're guarding, it's something we're protecting, it's something that we're allowing to stand by itself, but we're testing. Your heart nor your mind are ever meant to run separate. Because your mind makes, scientific decisions, hopefully. Your mind is like, your mind might be kind of spastic like mine, and it's like, here's this, oh no, what's this over here? And then it goes back and forth, and it's on 50 things. But you have to check back and forth between the two. If you allow your mind to make decisions, you'll never see what God may have for you if you would have followed your heart a little bit. If you let your heart make all the decisions, you'll probably get hurt a lot. You may do stupid things like pull people out of cars and in traffic and everything else. But our heart is angered easily, it's saddened easily, it's excited easily, where our mind takes a little longer. So a clean heart is a captive heart. It's one that we allow God to work through and allow ourselves to test, to go between the two. Is this what's right? Is this what's wrong? And that's where we'll be looking today as our primary focus. The scripture we're looking at, our key scripture today, is Matthew 5, 21 through 30. This is a really popular story. The scripture will be on the screen. If you use a slightly different translation, it's okay. There's a bunch of translations to choose from. My advice is pick one you can read, pick one you can understand, and pick one that you will continue to read. King James Version is what I grew up on in the little Baptist church I grew up in. And the thee, thou, and all that just got really confusing to me as a kid. And dost thou not knowest thee? Those type of sentences still confuse me. So pick whatever you can read. But we'll be looking at the NASB, it's the New American Standard Bible, and we'll start in verse 21. You have heard the ancients were told, you shall not commit murder, and whoever commits murder shall be liable to the court. But I say to you, that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court, and whoever says to his brother, you good for nothing, shall be guilty before the Supreme Court, and whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty enough to go into the fiery hell. Therefore, if you are presenting your offering at the altar, and there, when you're at the altar, remembering that your brother has something against you, leave your offering there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and present your offering. Make friends quickly with your opponent at law while you are with him on the way, so that your opponent may not hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Truly I say to you, you will not come out of there until you have paid up the last cent. Verse 27, you have heard that it was said, and you see there's a pattern, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you, that's that pattern there, you've heard, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it from you. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. For it is better for you to lose one part of your body than your whole body go into hell. Now these last couple of verses I want to explain because these are normally explained incorrectly, I believe. First of all, when he's talking about this, gouging out your eye, cutting off your hand, as hyperbole. He's using it as an example. It's an extreme example of what you should do to try to avoid doing bad. He's not saying cut off your hand literally. He's saying you should be willing to do whatever it takes to live right, to live proper. You should be willing to do this. It's not literally cutting off limbs and body parts, because if we were all honest, none of us would have hands, none of us would have eyes, none of us would have ears, we just kind of be maimed bodies laying around if we were still present, even there. So that's not what he's recommending. The other part is that the word that's actually translated as hell here, it's actually partially an incorrect translation. The Greek word used here is Gehenna. I could be saying that wrong, but it's Gehenna. It's Gehenna, something along those lines. Basically, it's actually the name, the Hebrew name. The Hebrew name is the Valley of Hinnom, which was a place near Jerusalem, linked with idolatrous sacrifices. Ones made sacrifices to other gods. And over time, it came to be a place that was representative of God's wrath. So the hell used here, it's not the same as when you see it used as Hades. That would actually be what we would consider hell. This is actually representative of a place that was not a good place to live. It wasn't a happy place. It wasn't a good place. It was just, this is God's wrath. So I just want that to be clear of the way that that's being used. Because we normally look at these verses all the way back, and the first time it's referenced is in the verse 22 and 23. And the word that he used is not the word that we would actually consider hell as a direct correlation. So I just wanted you guys to know that. So you understand a little bit more of where we're going today and where this comes from. Because it's not destroying our limbs, it's not cutting out these things, it's not the physical representatives that we have to do. He's talking about the representatives we have to take care of within our hearts, within our minds. It's not our body that sins. It's normally not my hand that sins, it's what my mind thinks, or what my heart wants that makes my hand sin, or that makes my eyes sin. It's not the sin is not coming from my eyes themselves, it's what's controlling me. So just so you understand. Beyond this though, your negative thoughts will poison your heart. It's that mind thing when we're fighting against our mind and our heart. I don't know about you guys, but I seem to go through spurts at times when my mind is really negative. Usually it's when I text Kristen and she doesn't answer her phone, I text her again, she still doesn't answer. It's like, is she in a car wreck? Did she die? Is she laying on the side of the road? Those kind of things. I know my mom used to say that. That was something if you don't answer your phone after I've called you a couple times, I'm going to assume you're dead or dying. My dad's the same way. But you kind of, the worst case scenarios kind of run through your mind. Maybe you don't have those problems, where it's they probably just forgot their phone. But no, it's the worst case scenario for me. They're dead, they're dying, they're hurt, they're maimed, whatever. No matter who you are, that's usually my first thing. I hope they're okay. It's pray for them. Hopefully they're okay. But our negative thoughts will poison our heart. Since our mind and our heart have to be able to be balanced, to have a clean heart for it to be captive, they need to be able to balance each other. So when your mind is completely negative all the time, you know, the little voices in your head are always negative and they're teaching you negative things, it leads into your heart. And then your heart starts to doubt things. Your heart starts to wonder, is this what's happening? Is this what's going on? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? Are they out to get me? One way where your heart gets poisoned is when you think that everything is a conspiracy that happens to you. Like the other group of people, they conspired to do that. That person cut me off on purpose, right? We've all thought that. That person did this on purpose. They're trying to hurt me. They're trying to take advantage of my kindness. They're doing this. That's where our hearts become poisoned, is because our minds will leave that in there, and then it becomes repetition. The more you do something, the more natural it feels. So the more negative you are, the more normal it feels, and then that becomes even more negative, and it becomes even more negative, and it hurts us. So the negativity will actually get us. Because like with Jesus, what he's doing, what he's teaching here, he's trying to change the way they think. He's trying to change the way that they allow themselves to reach and react to other people. Because in their culture, as I know I may have said it once or twice, but in their culture, the Jews had an entirely different law for themselves than how they treated other Jews, than how they treated foreigners and those around them. If you were like them, and this is not a good thing amongst especially our culture now, but if you treat people differently that are like you versus people that aren't like you, that's not a good thing. The Jews, they thought that this is how we treat each other. Do not kill, do not lie, do not steal, do not covet. Those are only laws on how to treat each other. Their own countrymen, their brothers, their sisters, and that's why they reference brother there. It's family. Because if you're a Jew, you're really all related. Like if we were all be serious, wherever our ancestry comes from, like I'm German, Irish, and Native American as my primary three. I'm a bit of everything, kind of a Heinz 57, I guess. But those are my biggest three. So if you're mostly German, we're probably related somewhere. It may be a long, long way down, but we would be related. Jews were the same way. The way they treated each other, respected each other, only went that far. But if you are angry with someone, if you've dreamt about, thought about hurting them, it's the same as if you've done it. That's what Jesus is saying. If you've been angry, you've wanted to hurt them, you've said you've hurt them, it's the same as doing it. I am in trouble with those things. Because have you ever thought about wanting to hurt someone? You hear about something on the news, something on the radio, maybe someone tells you something's happened. You ever thought about hurting someone? You ever thought they deserved it? They got what they deserved, they should have had it, they did that. It's the same as doing it. This is what Jesus says. So our negative thoughts will poison our heart because we allow them to become normal. If just being angry with someone is the same as committing murder, how many people have you killed? I don't know. I can't count that high. Just take my driving alone and try to count how many people I've been angry with. I'm gone. Sports, like people I physically know, people, and then, if you ever played any sport, if you might know what I mean, but you get that elbow to the gut or something, you're like, I'm gonna get them back. Get the elbow to the chin next time. Or, like we have those things where I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. To look at someone else and say that I want what they have. And this is where kids get in trouble. This is the first thing we learn, I think, is actually to covet and to lie. Did you eat that cookie? No. Man, I really want that cookie my brother's got or my sister's got, or I want what they have. It can be the exact same thing, but you want theirs instead. Our dogs do this. They can both have the exact same treat, and they'll fight over one of them and leave the other one on the ground. It's not just a people thing. It's a nature thing that we have to fight against. We have to fight against what our heart and our mind say is that what they have might be better. What they have might be this. We covet, we desire, we want. Well, so-and-so got a new car. My neighbor got a new car. Or they got this at their house. Or they got a new boat. I want a new boat. Or I want this and I want that. The negativity, the desires, all these things when we look at others, usually what it causes us to do is to think negatively of them first. Well, they bought that because they haven't come to church much. Or they got that because of this. Or they got that because of that. Or I heard so-and-so did this. You ever started a sentence with that? I heard. You know what I heard? That whisper? You know what I heard? Those aren't things we should do. Those are things, and Jesus says if we thought it, if we believed it, if we've desired it, that's our minds and our hearts both. It's the same as committing it. So we have to know that. The next thing that we see is that our actions will follow our heart. If you thought it, if you've allowed that thought to become a desire, which is usually where your heart comes into play, your actions will follow it. So I will say this, and this may be a touchy subject, but if you're married, if you're not married, however, but if you lust after a person of the opposite sex, and you lust after them, and you allow that to become something you do normally, it's in your head, it's in your heart, it will follow with your actions. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but it will happen if you allow that to become normal. Because if you thought it, and especially if you have a memory, like my brain remembers everything in pictures. And you can actually manipulate a photographic memory better than other memories, because if you believe it enough, and you thought it enough that this is the way it happened, it becomes true. Most memories are that way though. Have you ever told a story from when you were a kid, this is how this happened, and it gradually changes over time, and you remember the story that you've been telling, not the story of how it actually happened? Our actions will follow our heart. The things we say, the things we do, the things we believe. Jesus said later in Matthew 15 that the things that proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and those defile the man and woman both. It's not just men that get defiled by this. It's man as in human. So the things that proceed out of the mouth, they come from our heart. The things we say. You know that time when you tell someone, oh, that sweater's hideous. Oh, I'm just kidding. No, you're probably not. You're really not. Oh, your hair's kind of, oh, I'm just messing with you. No, I bet you're not. Let's be honest here. If we're all being totally honest, we know that when we say that, most of the time, people mean it. And this is where I get myself in trouble. I'm naturally a sarcastic person. So sometimes I say stuff to mess with people, and they think I am serious, or they don't know if I am serious, or anything like that. So I've had to learn to watch my sarcasm. Sarcasm has become kind of a normal humor. It's kind of normal today. Some people of previous generations may not understand it. I've said this many times, but just with friends. But if my family doesn't mess with you, we don't like you. That's how that works. We mess with you, we pick on you, we tell you stupid things. That's how we say we like you. So with this, the things that come out of our mouth come from our heart. So what are the things you say that you shouldn't say? The gossip, the lie. Like I said, we start with the stupidest lies most of the time. I personally know this. Lying on things you'll get caught. It's the same as the kid eating the cookie. I didn't eat that cookie, cookie crumbs all over their face. I didn't eat that. I remember I lied to my dad once. It's the only time I remember lying to him, and I got caught on it. I wrecked this four-wheeler, bent the handlebar. I didn't do it. I was 13 at the time. I didn't do it, and because I was the youngest, my dad just assumed my sisters or somebody was riding it that shouldn't have, and did it. Well, when he found out, the thing that got me is he just said, I'm not mad at you, I'm just disappointed. That hurt more than him being mad at me. Because I don't want to disappoint my dad. Be mad. Don't say I disappointed you, though. The things that proceed out of our mouth come from our heart. So what you say, your actions, those come from your heart directly. Those have that direct correlation, the direct benefit. That's why when we put things into our minds, our mind leads to our heart, and our heart leads to our mouth. It leads to our actions. It leads to our movements. So we have to protect those. We have to guard those. We have to allow them to stay contained. Because it's easy for us to allow our hearts to go kind of crazy, right? It's easy for our hearts to do stupid things. At least for me. But if we see that our actions follow our heart, we know that whatever we do, we can see where it's coming from. Because I don't know, you ever do something, you're like, that's not the result I wanted? I think there's a new Netflix show about fails, like cake fails, bake fails, stuff like that. And it's like, you see them on Pinterest, I think it's like, oh, this looks really cool, I could do that. Then you do it and it looks hideous. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've done it. and it looks terrible. I know Kristen is a great baker, and she's done a few of those where it's like, that didn't really come out the way I expected. It didn't come out right. When you see that type of thing, we see that as an example, but in our lives it's the same way. When we don't get the result we wanted, what did we put into it? What came in? If we're not getting the result that we want with our heart, with our mind, what are we putting in? What are we getting out? Whatever you put in is going to be what you get out. You can't put in junk and get out really good things. If you put good in, you'll get good out. If you put bad in, you'll get bad out. So with our lives, we have to see that. One thing that we can do to help increase our actions that follow our hearts is, have you ever been around someone and they act one way through the entire week, but then they'll invite you to church or something like that, and it does not meet their actions at all? I think we know these people. I think the people that don't go to church know these people, because that's why they call a lot of us hypocrites, because they meet people that live one way, and then they're like, oh, hey, you should come to my church sometime, but they cuss like a sailor and talk crude jokes and all these things the rest of the time. For us, the way that we can make our actions follow our heart is if we really love Jesus, we put Jesus first. First we're going to talk about him. No one has to be told to talk about their kid when they have a baby. Three friends who just had babies in December, one who is due now, basically in the next couple weeks. They don't have to be told to talk about their babies. They don't have to be told, hey, you should probably, if you really love your kid, you should talk about them more. No. You don't have to tell people to talk about their kids usually, do you? No. You don't. You don't have to. When people, buy a new house, buy a new car, you don't have to tell them to talk about it. You don't have to tell people to do things that they care about, that they love, they spent time, money invested on. So if we love Jesus and we spend time there, we love him, we read, we pray, we do these things, do our actions follow? If we say with our heart, and we say with our mind, and we say with our mouth, this is who we are, this is what we do our actions follow that? Do we invite people to church? Do we pray for people? Do we ask people to pray for us? Do we try to make a difference? Or are you a person at work where you're trying to sabotage your coworker because you're both going for the same promotion? Are you, out to get them and oh, you know what I heard? They did this, and then, you spread rumors and lies. But if your heart is focused on you, you'll get a totally different result than if your heart is focused on God. Because when it's focused on you, you'll do what is best for you. I'm looking out for numero uno. I'm looking out for me. I'm not looking out for anybody else. That's the heart that says it's me. It's about me. It's all about me. We'll sabotage anybody. We'll lie. We'll steal. We'll cheat. We'll do whatever we have to do to get what we want. And you can see that daily in our society. Anytime you hear about someone embezzling funds as a corporate officer, CFOs, any of those guys, it's because they're going to do whatever they can and what they feel they can get away with. Because most of those people, I've met a few because of where I work and what I do, and when you take money like that, well, I got away with a little bit and no one noticed, so I thought I'd see if I could get away with more. That's usually where it starts. It starts with the small steps. It never starts out with, I transferred $1 million from this account to my personal account. I started with $1,000. I started with whatever. And they work their way up, and sometimes it's that small amount over and over and over again until they finally get caught. Our hearts and our minds work the same way. We don't usually allow ourselves to be deceived on the huge things immediately. It starts with one small step, one small deception. Well, it didn't hurt. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get caught. And we do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again until it becomes normal. And that's why we have to be able to take our heart captive. If we take our heart captive, we'll guard our minds, we'll guard our heart, and we'll protect them. You kind of put it in a safe place. You allow yourself, when you think, I'm going to do this, you check it with your mind. Is this good? I'm a big person of checks, check values. You can check it against something, checklist. I've used them at work. I use checklists all the time. Actually, it feels like at work. And it's, did you miss anything? Checklist. When you're doing stuff in your personal life, you kind of need that soft checklist. it doesn't need to be pages and pages, but who does it glorify? Is it good? What will people think when I do this? What is the reaction of it? Am I hurting anyone? Like those type of things. I don't know if you do checklists like that with your hearts, with your minds when you're going to do something, but you should. Because a lot of times, like I said, our heart will be deceived. It's that immediate gut reaction when we get in trouble. Because I've never heard of someone saying that, well, I went through and I checked and I stepped back from the situation and made a decision, and then they don't usually step back and make the really wrong decision. It's the one that you, like, I'm going to react right now. And that's what gets people in trouble. Saying we're going to react today, we're going to happen, and let this all go down right now. I'm going to fix it right now. When you're hot, no, you're not going to fix anything. You're just going to be really mad and you're going to blow things up. That's my natural inclination. I know that's a lot of ours, is we're just like, I'm going to fix it today. It's going to be done. It's going to be over. Everything's going to blow it all up. And it just makes a mess. Our hearts need to be taken captive because our hearts are deceived. Our hearts are what people see. It's what people hear about. It's what people see our reactions from. Like I said, if you've ever heard anyone ever tell, well, everyone's a hypocrite, it's because our actions and our words don't line up. That's what a hypocrite means, right? They say one thing and do another. One thing that I've always learned, and one thing that I believe to be true, though, is that we have to be careful when we call others hypocrites. Partially because you can't judge other people by their actions and judge yourself by your intentions. Our intentions and our actions are almost always vastly different. Because I don't know about you, I mean to say something in a nice way and I come across like a jerk. Or I mean to try to give a compliment and it comes off rude, or any of those things. I don't know if you've done that. I have. Maybe it's just a me thing. But we have to be able to give advice, say this, say that, and know that just because someone made one mistake, did one wrong thing, does not mean that everything else they've done is wrong. Their actions and their intentions could be different. So we have to allow ourselves to do that. But our hearts, our minds, and our life are all connected. Each step. They're not individual. They can't be broken out and say, I'm only going to react with my mind and it will not affect my heart. I'm only going to look here. I'm only going to do this. I'm only going to look at this for a second. It's not going to affect me in any way. I'm only going to lie this one time. I'm only going to want what they have this one time. I'm only going to do this one time. I'm only going to cheat this one time. It's not going to affect me. You can't. It doesn't separate. It doesn't split out somehow and make it where it's like, oh, everything's okay. It was just a white lie. It was just one. When you lie once, that lie usually has to be repeated and then repeated. The story has to grow and it gets bigger and it goes further and it goes on longer. But Jesus said, if you have wronged someone, you need to go ask for forgiveness before you even make the sacrifice. He's talking about the sacrifice at the altar. What they did when they would make sacrifices at the time, they'd bring, depending what type of sin it was, it could be doves, it could be lambs, but it was always supposed to be young, right? It was supposed to be unblemished. It was supposed to be perfect. You may bring the right sacrifice, but if you don't bring the right heart, it doesn't make a difference. Because you can say, I'm going to give it all, but I'm going to hold on to these things, and it's not the same thing. He said it's better to go and ask for forgiveness. That person that you have wronged, you know that they have something against you. And did you notice he says if they have something against you, not if you have something against them, not if you have wronged them, it could just be a perception of being wronged that they have. I don't know about you, but my natural inclination is that they think I've wronged them, and I'm like, I have done nothing. I have nothing to apologize for. He says if you have wronged them, if they have something against you, if it's perception, if it's reality, go and ask for forgiveness. Leave your offering there. Don't take it with you if it takes days, if it takes weeks. Because they didn't have cars. So they travel in to make their sacrifice. And it says, leave it and go back. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking like, pick up your phone, hey, apologize. He's talking like, okay, walk back, 7 days travel, ask for forgiveness, then come back and commit your offering. They couldn't call, they couldn't send an email. You'd be like, hey dude, I'm sorry, text message, sent. All right, I'm good. Like, that's not what he's saying. He's saying ask, take the time, do it properly, do it the right way. Like, they didn't have an easy way around it like we do today. You can't pick up a phone. But it was better for them to wait 2 weeks, or wait a week, or wait several days, maybe even miss the deadline for the offerings because they were done at certain times, than it was for them to make the offering and then go back. Because most of us will like the shortcut, right? Well, I'll just go ahead and make the offering so I don't have to come back, and then I'll go ask for forgiveness, and it'll be okay. He says, wait, go. And I'll ask if everyone will stand with me. And as we come to close and we begin to close, I know this week's a tough one. And, the captive itself, the series itself, isn't the easiest series. Because it's nice and it's easy to say good things. It's easy to say nice things and happy, fluffy things, but to say that we need to take control of our minds and our hearts, and what we do and what we believe will affect our actions. The actions and results that we're getting are of our own doing. They are. They're our own. As many times we say, I'm putting in these things, but I'm getting out this. Examine your heart. If you have someone that you have wronged or someone that believes that you have wronged them, I encourage you this week, reach out. Ask for forgiveness. Whether if you feel that you owe them an apology or not, ask for forgiveness. That's what Jesus said to do. He didn't say, if you know that you have wronged them, but if they have something against you, ask for forgiveness. If you feel that you've allowed your heart to rule your life, to make the decisions, to do things maybe the wrong way, ask God to forgive you. Ask those around you to forgive you, those that have something against you. And I said, everyone, if you'll close your eyes and bow your heads, and I'll just hold for a moment. But if you need to pray, you can come up to the altar and pray. You can pray and ask God to forgive you. You can ask God for guidance to ask someone else to forgive you. Because it's not easy to ask for forgiveness, especially when you think you've done nothing wrong, or you know that they have done worse to you. But God says ask them. Seek forgiveness. You can pray where you are, and I encourage you to. I encourage you to search your heart and your mind and see if there's someone you need to ask for forgiveness from. Someone that you have wronged, someone that thinks you have wronged them, someone that you have witnessed to, and maybe they've seen you fail. We'll take a moment here.